Okay, so from 44 degrees north latitude, out collecting some wild edibles, and started thinking about the shelf life, how long they will store. And about a mile south of here, I found acorns on the ground, of course, that have been there all winter. And I picked one up, and I peeled the shell off, and I tasted it, and even after being there all winter, it still had that bitter tannin taste to it. And I took another one that had started to sprout, and I did the same, and it still had the bitter tannin. And just happened in my rucksack, I had about a dozen acorns that have been in the rucksack in the car all winter, and I grabbed some of them, and I tried a taste, and it still had the bitter tannins. And so, and of course, my interest in this is because acorns store very well. Squirrels bury them and dig them up later. And so what I wanted to determine is the tannin content, if it's located. And what I'm doing right now, I'm scraping the outside of the acorn nut meat. I have two different kinds of acorns here, and I'm scraping away the outside of the nut meat, and which is not to say that when I'm preparing a meal that I'm going to scrape a bunch of acorns. Actually, this is just to tell me where the tannin is, if it's on the outside of the nut meat or inside. And I'm going to scrape that away, and I'm going to taste it. So the difference being, these acorns were stored indoors in the dark in a dry rucksack in my car all winter, and the ones I sampled on the trail have been outside on the ground all winter. And I am peeling away the inside. And by the way, these are dicotyledon, means that the seed has two halves, and so the inside where I pulled it away, I'm scraping that, and thinking that perhaps on the inside of the seed there would be less of the tannins. And after storage, these things are drier and a little more hard. They're more dehydrated. Oh. That isn't bad. That isn't bad. And it may tell me that most of the tannin was on the outer husk. It's still kind of bitter, but instead of a little scrape, I may just shave right off with my knife here. And it's a pretty hard nut. Okay, that is not bad. Now I'm going to grab another one. I know this is a white oak, just by the bullet shape. And now I'm going to cut a bunch of the nut off, where I know I'm only tasting the very inside of the nut. And what this is going to tell me is what I'll have to do in preparation if I was to gather up a bunch of these in the fall and keep them through the winter to use in a meal later. So I have cut away deeper into the nut, and this is a different kind. This one's a white oak, That's not bad. And I want to say that this isn't much different than, let's say, black walnut or a hickory nut if you had left that husk on there. So this tells me that most of that tannin is on the outer husk, the outside of the nut meat, and it wouldn't be some very tedious preparation to get these ready to complement a meal. So the moral of the story is it would probably be worth my while to gather a bunch of these in the fall and keep them to use in a meal in winter. They store very well. They're a little bit dried, so the nut is pretty hard, crunchy. I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of. It's harder than a peanut. Okay, this is a different kind of acorn right here. These are very smaller and round, and the husk is already off of it when I took the nut out of the shell. I'll just give the outside of this half of the nut meat a scrape. And I was wandering around and gathered up a bunch, threw them in the rucksack and forgot about them. And so, not only have I cut the nut meat in half, I've scraped the outside, and this nut is, this acorn, I don't know what kind it is. Well, it's very small. It's pretty good. There's no real pronounced flavor that would tell you if it reminded you of a peanut or anything else. I didn't scrape the inner part of the nut meat. I just scraped it on the outside, and I had cross-sectioned the nut. And so basically, this tells me that it wouldn't take a whole lot of preparation to get these things ready for a meal. It would be very doable. There's different methods what people do. Wash them. I think my next step is I'll try roasting them in a pan and see if I can just roast that outer and reduce the amount of tannin that's in the acorn. But anyways, yeah, it would be worth it to me to actually store these for later use, just because they store so well and they are usable. Okay, from 44 degrees north latitude, Lat 44 Outdoor. Thanks, viewers and subscribers. I hope this was helpful, and I know there are methods for preparing the acorns, and this one is just to tell me if it'd be worth my while to harvest them and store them. And I'm saying I will. I'll do it. Okay, thanks bunch from Lat 44 Outdoor.